So here we are. We got Chris Duckett here drawing. He's drawing for issue number 2 of Nemesis. Nemesis originally came out. It was an idea that Gary proposed to me back in 2008 when we worked at Information Technology High School in Queens, and then it just took forever for me to get it done because we were both coaching. Mm-hmm. Then I had a kid. My son was born that year. Mm-hmm. Then I think I was doing the Bronx Heroes Con. so it was like, when do I have time to sit down and draw this thing?
There it is.
There you go. Yeah, there it goes. I still love that cover, though. I think
me too. This should be the cover of the collected edition when we do it.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful cover. So let me ask you. I don't know if I ever did, Gary. What made you come up with the concept of Nemesis? What was the reasoning to take this Greek mythology and put it into a comic book?
Did I have it when we started talking, or did I come up with it when we started talking? I don't remember. I don't remember. I think I showed you a bunch of my things, and you said you liked this one.
Yeah, I was looking at your portfolio. You had like a portfolio stuff, and then you even had that cool drawing that was a proposal that you and Paris did for for Blue Devil, and then ironically Hellboy came out and it looked just like it. I was like, wait a second.
yeah. When we were going to change Blue Devil into Midnight Blue.
Into Midnight Blue, yeah. He had the trench coat and the misting horn. And, I think you should still write that. Maybe with the New Devil or something. Or
I'm not sure. You know, I wish I could remember exactly when I came up with this character, but
I do remember we were both sitting down behind the desk. We were looking at this artwork, and then you were like, "Hey, I have this idea." But I mean, overall, as a writer, I mean, you know, you read classic literature growing up. Yeah. What made you decide, hey, I want to put these characters in the 20th century, in the 1980s?
Initially, it wasn't that it was going to be the 1980s, but except that I may have thought of the property in the 1980s. You know, that's how far back a lot of these things go.
Right. Because it's funny, because now that's popular. Like everything's 80s, and we were like ahead of our time. You know, it's like
couple of things I haven't told you. I think I'm imagining now that there's going to be a second arc. This is the first arc of 6, and the second arc will start in 2023.
Oh yeah.
So she's been in New York now for 40 years.
Right.
And one of the things I was bothering myself about as I was reading through this is that all the characters are gods. It's got to be a human character. So in issue, the one I'm working on now, we're going to meet Cassandra Jones, who is, when we meet her, she's an NYU student studying mythology. And like her namesake, Cassandra, she knows what's going on. Nobody believes her.
Right.
Nobody ever believes Cassandra. So
I have a question from Blitz on Twitch.
Do you guys make comics?
Of course. Like
what are we talking about?
Of course.
Blitz, what do you mean you guys make comics?
Yeah, Gary is a former DC Comics writer, so yes. And you work for other companies as well, right? What were the other companies? Crusade?
And a few others, yeah. I even did a little bit of work for Marvel.
At Marvel, yeah.
I actually wrote 3 scripts for Marvel. Right. And for every one of them, the book got canceled before mine came up.
Which
I did get paid for them. I did get paid for them, but
which were the books? Do you remember which titles?
Yeah, Ron Randall and I did something for the 2021 series that was going to be like a backup called Hell Rockers. And I've got the 14 pages of the original Hell Rockers stuff, which had one of my favorite characters ever. I've got to do something with him. He was called Ooze. And he's one of the Hell Rockers who are kind of the heroes, but they're really awful heroes.
right.
What Ooze looks like is a floating garbage can.
Right.
But it's filled with slime. Right. And when they're fighting somebody, all these slimy tentacles. Remember that green goop called slime that came in a garbage can thing?
Yeah.
But that eye stalks come out sometimes from the garbage can, kind of on these oozy tentacles. And if we're fighting a bunch of villains, Ooze will squirt out these goopy tentacles and pull them into the garbage can and kind of eat them, dissolve them.
Well, it's funny. I started during the pandemic. I was looking at different submissions I did for DC and Marvel, and that's when I started putting together these stories, and working on those books. And I was like, well, these are great stories. Why aren't I using them? I've been sitting on these.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's your next project,
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, I've got a few of them. So anyway, Cassandra Jones. When we meet her in this series, she's in her early 20s. She's kind of figured out what the drug thing is that Dionysus and Apollo are into. Mm-hmm. And I want to give it a TikTok. So I want to talk to you guys about this too, because I said put some stuff of people passing the drugs around in the nightclub scene and maybe on the street scene, but easy on that, because up until this story starts, they've been testing the drug.
Right.
And they've gotten it wrong a lot of the time. And it's done things like made people explode or melt down or go into roid rage but but because what it is it's ambrosia. It's the sacred honey of the bees that were fed to the gods, right? It's the food of the gods.
That's cool.
And so what they're doing is they're distilling it down to these really minute doses and putting it in tabs and calling it ambi, like ambrosia. So, hey man, you want some ambies? And when the dose was too much, it was far too much for a human mortal body to take. And it was having all these weird side effects. So they're trying to get it down to the dosage where you don't really know what you're going to get, but you're not going to explode. You might get hallucinations. You might see Olympus. You might have 30 seconds of immortal powers. You just don't know.
Right.
But they finally perfected it. They've had this big shipment that's gone to this factory. It's all been tabbed up. And now it's going to be distributed throughout the city.
Right.
And when Cassandra explains this to Nemesis realizes we must stop this from happening.
Right.
That's our TikTok. That's our sense of urgency.
I like that. That's cool.
Before the end of the story, they will have shut down. Meanwhile, Poseidon, down in Coney Island, running the Russian mobs, he knows what they're doing, and he wants in on it. He wants to get control of the ambi market even before it starts. He tries to assassinate Zeus because he knows Zeus is new here. He doesn't know about this. But as soon as he does, he's going to take it all over.
Right.
So, got to get rid of Zeus right away. As soon as he shows up, we got to get rid of him.
We got a question. This guy is saying, wow, that's cool. Do you guys think that recent popularity of comics to shows, Invincible, and movies, Marvel, has renewed the comic book industry, or not enough yet?
Who the fuck knows?
Don't know yet. Maybe.
Please, I appreciate you asking questions, but we do what we do.
Yeah,
we could go blah 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 about the part of the industry that we have nothing to do with.
Right.
But who cares?
Yeah,
I think it's
a trickle down, though.
I do have an opinion on that a little bit. It's the comic book industry has always been recognized for the past 10, 12 years.
Right.
And the thing about it is that it's an industry that is that has been taken advantage of by Hollywood perspectives.
I totally disagree.
Right.
I totally.
Well, I mean, they're taking advantage of everything. DC is controlled by AT&T, Warner, aka Warner Brothers, and then you got Marvel.
They're capitalizing.
Well, I think they're capitalizing it. Yeah, they are. Because they're buying tons of properties. Look at Netflix and Mark Millar's universe.
The people who have made this stuff are making
good
money.
Ones that are losing out?
No, they're making good money. The creators are making good money.
I think it's very little because I know
some of these guys.
Oh, so a lot of let's say the guy who did Thanos, Jim Starlin, did he make good money on Thanos or?
But I know some of these guys. No, they're getting the best paydays of their lives.
Oh, really? Really?
Yes.
So for Jim, did Jim Starlin make money on Thanos or anything like that? Because I know
what I've heard again is that you make the guys who did stuff that's being adapted from DC are seeing a lot more than the guys who did stuff from Marvel.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
That the DC stuff is being the royalty deal is paying off a lot better.
Oh, wow. That's good to know.
But
yeah. Robert Kirkman, I'm sure, is making a killing with Invincible.
Yeah. The question
Kirkman is loaded with lawyers.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, of course you have to. Yeah, you have to. I would be too. That's how you get the best deal.
I think the question was, is the success of all the media, all the movie and TV comic stuff boosting sales for the comics industry?
I don't know.
And
I wouldn't imagine so. Minutely, but
yeah, and both Marvel and DC are R&D. That's what they are now. They're research and development. They're seed companies, and what they create is a seed. And the movies and the TV, that's the tree. And that's where the mass market is, and that's fine. I just want to be part of the tree.
Well, real quick, I got some other gods here.
Okay. Let's see them.
Aphrodite. I'm still working on her. I don't know if you can see that well.
Who is this?
That's going to be the Aphrodite.
Okay. Again, there is an image of her, but she's way in the back, so that very well could be this character.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking at
what I imagine with Aphrodite is that whoever looks at her sees their own ideal of beauty. That you would see Aphrodite as a completely different person than I would see her at if we're both looking at her at the same time. Now, how that gets showed as art, I have no idea.
Well, that would be shown in a sequence. That would be shown that the way the person is looking. If you got one of the priests looking at her, he sees what he sees, and the other priest sees what he sees.
And what the other gods see. Go ahead.
Whether it be perverted or not, you understand?
Well, I'm talking about face. Just face. That image of beauty, and what the other gods see.
That would. I read that in your. You got that in the script.
Okay.
Yeah, you got that in the script.
We're going by Bible and verse that's printed in the comic.
This is the Bible. In the far edge of that last double page spread,
right here.
There she is, and and she's got blue skin, and so does Ares.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with them having blue skin as the other gods see them, and Ares all the time.
Yeah.
But
because I thought of him almost like he's kind of like the king of the underworld. So I was like, it's either gray or
Hades.
or,
Hades is the king of the underworld.
No, king of Hades is the god of war. Sorry, right?
No, Ares is the god.
Ares god of war. So Hades
is the underworld.
Is underworld. So he's Hades.
But that's Ares.
It's Ares, but isn't Ares and Hades like Greek Roman translation?
No. Hades is Pluto to the Romans.
Oh, Pluto, got it.
Ares is Mars to the
Mars. Oh, so he's the god of war.
Right.
God of war, yeah.
Right. Okay. Zeus's team is himself, Hermes, Hephaestus, the guy who makes shit,
yeah.
Aphrodite, and
go back to
that's the team. That's the team he's bringing to Earth. And at some point in the fourth issue, Nyx comes to Hera.
Right.
Says, I need to talk to your husband.
Right.
And Hera and Athena
right.
and Artemis look at each other and they say,
right.
Where are all the guys?
Yeah.
And Artemis's constant refrain is, and where's that bitch Aphrodite? Because Artemis is the virgin goddess, right? Who never ever lets a man touch her, and Aphrodite's the goddess of love, so she hates each other. So what they realize when they kind of look is, oh shit, they're all on Earth. All the male gods and Aphrodite are on Earth for the first time in 2,300 years.
Right.
What are they doing there?
Right.
And so they've got their own stream going.
Yeah.
We're going to end up with a sacred 12 of goddesses.
I think that's cool. I like the way it's going. I can't wait till this comes out.
Does there pop?
This guy has another question. He says, I meant, does the popularity have positive effect outside of the bubble to your indie artists, or does it stay in that bubble? My intent wasn't to take away from you guys. My bad.
You take it, Ray. You've done a lot more indie stuff than I have.
I don't know. I mean, does it take the popularity to have positive effect outside the? I don't know. Honestly, yes and no. I think people get more curious, but it's almost like at the Comic-Con, right? When you go to comic conventions, these movies are generating star power where these stars are now coming to cons. So now I think it takes away from the independence, I think, because people used to go to comic shows for comics, but now they're coming for celebrities. And then what happened was the whole cosplayer phenomenon, which is nice, and it's a new dynamic. But again, it takes away from the actual creators and the books so. I mean, it's just more for everybody. I think it's made it more mainstream. If you didn't have cosplayers and if you didn't have the Hollywood stars in the comic conventions, I think what you'd have is basically like a book club of like just comic readers, like, and it'd be more like a comic book store where people. That's what it was when I was a kid. The conventions were like these nerdy guys, just like record collectors. Yes. That's basically what it was. So it's a good. I think it's a good thing they made it more mainstream. What do you think, Chris?
I see it as, everybody goes to like the big comic book conventions. New York Comic Con is basically, it's not for the comic artists. It's not for, it's for the superstar artist. It's for the superstar writer.
Right.
It
wasn't always
for
like
the actors. Yeah. That's what it's for. Because as far as independence, you can still hear me because it looked like I froze.
You froze, but I hear you. You look like you're just about to give us a
so it's more of it seems like it's more for the people that are up at the top than the people that are at the bottom creating independent comics. Because we have to do our own advertisement. We have to push ourselves to the limits to beat that chord to get to that point to be at those cons. And once again, you still got, I would say people that created these characters are not, they're not paid attention to. They're not well known because, the people that are going to these cons today don't have no history of a lot of the characters that they're seeing or that's been around for the past 70 years. They don't have no history, no relationship towards the character. What they have a relationship is towards the actor that's playing the character, or they have a relationship towards the artist that's drawing it right now. And that's it.
Right. That's a good point. Well, the only thing I hate is that whenever I do one of these, like for instance, when I was doing Runaway Slave, that book came out in 2007 or 2008. And then Django comes out maybe 2010 or 12. And then you go to a show and someone's like, oh, you're just imitating Django. It's like, no, this book has been out for a long time. Or like, Black Panther has been around way longer than Black Power, of course. But, then I'm doing the Black Power that came out around the same time. And then someone's like, actually, no, Runaway Slave, I think it was even earlier. It was like 2004 or something. But anyway, then Black Panther, the movie, comes out. And then someone comes to the convention. They're like, oh, this is Black Panther. I was like, no, it's not. It's like
there are only so many ideas.
Yeah,
and we're all playing. We're all cooking in the same kitchen. We all have basically the same ingredients, and what we make is what we make.
Right.
As we're working on Nemesis, I made sure that I at least read one of the Percy Jackson novels and saw one of the Percy Jackson movies. Because Rick Riordan, who wrote those things, has this thing going. It's not Harry Potter, but it's a notch or two down from Harry Potter. And it's a big success. And most kids are familiar with Percy Jackson and this world where the Greek gods are in the modern world.
Right.
And there are supernatural beings. There are satyrs and minotaurs and I'm blanking on the guys who are half force.
Right. But it's kind of like Never-Ending Story too, basically. Percy Jackson.
So it's the same stuff.
Right.
But it's his take on it.
Right.
A friend of mine is a big fan of the Redwall books. Do you know Redwall? Series of novels, very successful, set in a medieval world with warrior mice.
Oh, okay.
Who are fighting rats and stuff like that.
Right. It's like Mouse Guard type of thing, right?
That's the point, is that Redwall came out a little bit before Mouse Guard.
Right.
And I was reading something by the guy who created Mouse Guard, and he said, yes, I was aware of Redwall, and it came out as something that was similar. He was writing an appreciation for the guy who wrote Redwall when he died. And he said it was great stuff. And he knew when Redwall came out that Redwall was both what he looked at for inspiration and what he had to look at for anti-inspiration, because he could not be doing what Redwall was. He's still the same element, right? It's still warrior mice in a medieval world.
Right.
But he's got to play it really differently. Right. And in the same way, I've got the gods in New York here. We've got the gods in New York. This is like
we should throw Lou Reed in the next issue.
This is like Percy Jackson. Yeah, we could really do that. We could do a CBGBs.
Right.
The
Velvet Underground.
You get to paint the world, right? If they walk past CBGBs, that's great.
Right.
So we've got the gods in the modern world. He's got the gods in the modern world. We're doing it differently. Right. Ours is a different thing.
Yeah, very different.
And nobody owns Zeus. Zeus is coming in the Thor movie.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Right. That's right. You're right. That's going to be Russell Crowe is going to be Zeus.
Right.
And they're going to introduce Hercules.
Right. So nobody owns Zeus.
Right. Exactly.
So there can be hundreds of versions of Zeus, but ours is ours.
Right.
And we play him differently.
Right.
And we see the gods differently. And our explanation for what's going on doesn't have to conform to the mythology completely.
Exactly. True.
We take what we like. We take what works for us.
Mm-hmm.
And because, I was reading about Loki.
He's back.
Hey, Chris. I was, because, it's Marvel that decided that Loki is Odin's son.
Right.
And Thor's brother, even though adopted. It's Marvel that decided that.
Right.
Because in the mythology, he's not.
Right, he's not.
He's more of a contemporary of Odin.
Right.
And then you look at the mythology, and there's so many different mythology stories in the original mythology that conflict. There's no consistency.
Right, exactly.
In one story, he's this. In one story, he's that. What are his powers? I don't know. Loki even changes gender in some stories.
He does. He turns into a woman. Yeah.
Yeah. So you do whatever you want with these characters. You take what works for the story you want to tell.
Which I thought was pretty cool, actually. When Loki turned into a female, I was interested in Loki again, and then from there he turned into a kid. Yeah. And when he turned into a male boy, I thought that was interesting too. I was like, oh, this is because honestly, out of all the Marvel comic books reading as a kid, Thor was the least interesting to me. I don't know why.
Except that you weren't reading it when the Kirby stuff was coming out, were you?
No. Walt Simonson. My brother was.
Well, yeah. Walt Simonson was a holy shit artist too.
Yeah, he was good. He was.
When I was reading Thor, it was during Simonson's time, and at that time, I really got into Better Ray Bill, and I spoke to Walt on a situation when I was 15 years old. Michael Davis and Dennis Cowan took me over to his house, and I had this big, there was 2 comic book pages of a redrawing of his Better Ray Bill cover that he had Better Ray Bill. And I was like, oh yeah, I drew this. And he's like, oh, I'll put it on the wall. Of course, it never went on the wall, but I told him about it. He was like, he's like, that's so many years ago. I don't even remember that. So that was kind of funny, but that was one day.
I 3 black men in your house. It's like,
no, he had 3 black men in his house. 3 black men.
That's what I'm saying. You don't forget that.
3 black men in his house. But let me.
Me going to church, and I'm like one of the few Hispanic guys there because it was an all black church. You don't forget that. It's it leaves an impression on you. Because you're absorbed in the culture and the food. Mm-hmm. The one thing I miss about going to church is that every Sunday somebody was having a cookout or a dinner, and you'd go there right after.
Did I tell you that I spent the past 2 years before the pandemic, teaching at an HBCU?
No.
Virginia Union University in town is a historically black college university, and I was adjunct in the English department for 2 years. And
awesome.
I backed away from it when the pandemic hit because they weren't sure if they were going to do classroom or anything, and then when they were doing online stuff, I just didn't feel like I was up to that.
Right.
But now that we're all vaccinated, I don't know if
you got both shots. You're good.
Yeah, over a month ago.
Oh wow! I'm waiting for my second one, May 15th.
Good. So I don't know if my relationship with them will start up, but it's a pretty interesting thing to be the white guy in front of a classroom of African American students. Mm-hmm. And what's my credibility and where am I in this scheme of things? And how do I make sure that I'm respectful and acceptable and with the program, and where in my own presentation and in my thought process and all of that stuff, am I not fitting? And how do I check myself? How do I analyze myself in the context of I'm no longer in the scene where 80% of people around me are white. So that habitual sense of the environment around you, no matter what your politics, as you know, mine pretty left, and whatever your sense of social justice, which, as you know, mine is pretty strong, but still, you're not quite in the environment that you're used to, and now you have to put yourself in that environment and say,
are you in culture shock? Is that what you mean?
Well, no, how legit am I? You know? And that's a question you got to ask yourself. And most of the time, as a white guy in America, not really white. I'm only white until they start to say "get the Jews."
Right, exactly.
As soon as they do that, I'm not white. But
white in America. That's the difference.
Who is moving through the world? That's a white guy.
You're white in the north. In New York, you're white. In the north.
Well, even here. But,
oh, really? Okay.
And it really depends on who's looking at you, right?
Right.
You know, what you see depends on where you stand.
Right.
And absolutely, every student that I taught at VUU looked at me and saw a white guy.
Right.
Sometimes it's a white guy. I'm a white guy who's transmitting history that's their history that they don't know. And because I'm a history guy too, and because I'm left and the social justice warrior. So
I think there should be a superhero called Social Justice Warrior.
No, stay away from that. I stay away from that.
You know, every time I see that SJW though, because I'm a leftover from the 70s.
Right.
My first thought is single Jewish woman.
Right. Single Jewish woman.
That's what somebody else said to me. I brought that up, and I was like, no. I said that's a social justice warrior. They was like, you sure?
Well, yeah, I checked myself. Sure? You know, my first reaction is because I used to look at the classifieds and the personals when I was in my 20s, and SJW was single Jewish woman. So I see right-wing bullshit about SJWs. I said, what do they have against single Jewish? Oh, right, social justice warrior.
Yeah. Well, you have
everything's changed, Gary. Everything's changed.
I know. I'm a 20th century guy just trying to keep up.
I know. I'm just a Puerto Rican with a bad hair sense, with that bad fashion sense.